G'day and welcome to Give Me the Remote. It's episode
21
on the 20th of November.
2018.
I got confused with all the 20s.
And who are you?
I'm Sheridan.
And who am I?
It's John.
Hey, we've done an intro.
Podcasting 101. Sheridan wins. Actually loses.
Yeah, nice one. And our 21st, we're oddly enough doing sober, so hooray for us.
I've done several episodes sober, actually.
So have I, but we're both sober for the 21st, which is unusual in Australian tradition that our 21st birthday is a celebration
true.
of
That is true.
some excess.
Yeah.
Was that a wolf?
Ian's not happy about the sober.
Firsts, yeah. Okay, and first up, I'm going to talk quickly about Seven Deadly Sins on Netflix. Yeah, look, it's Japanese animation. And, where am I going here? It's a weird thing. Japanese animation has this this funny narrative often about a separation of worlds. So you've got your demon world and your spirit world and the world that we live in as humans. And in some ways it's not actually that different to Western traditions of folklore. But the idea that there was a time when the worlds were closer and now they're further apart, and this was set long ago when they were closer. Despite being silly, very silly in parts, it's got some just beautifully written characters and stories. So
I haven't watched this one.
No.
So what are they, like 20-minute episodes? Like,
yeah.
what's
20-minute
the
episodes, and you definitely need to learn how to use the skip intro button because there's like 5 minutes of intro on every single episode.
That was a great invention.
Which is something the Japanese particularly seem to love with their animated stories, is just huge intros. So that's a good one to learn how to jump on that whenever it comes up. But really strong stories is probably what makes this work, and really interesting characters and strange adaptations. So it's sort of set in a pseudo medieval England, very very loosely a Japanese idea of medieval England.
Is it English? Is it subtitled or?
No, it's not English. Well, it's a classic thing where you get an English dub and you get the subtitles, and they're translated by different people. So you can actually get quite a bit of nuance when the subtitles go with a slightly different translation to the dub. Look, if you've ever watched any Japanese animation and you like it, then this is a real red hot one. Now, having said that, we've just finished season 3. Season 1 is excellent. Season 2 is like this nothing weird collection of stories. And then season 3 is really strong return to form. It's really good. And if you haven't seen any Japanese animation, I would say try this if you think you might like a fantastic story. As I was saying before, the weird reimaginations of medieval England. So you've got a Merlin character that has some traits of Merlin from Arthurian legend, and there's a lot of talk of King Arthur and Camelot and things like that, but they're all totally moved away from any canon they ever belonged to. But Merlin is actually a attractive young woman who likes to get around in a purple G-string and very little else. Congratulations to Japan for a really novel reimagining.
Starting with the kind of feminist kind of writing in of the female characters, ruining it.
She's still a very strong character who no one messes with, I hasten to add, but it's never exactly explained why she doesn't like wearing clothes very much. And look, I think I can probably finish with that as an example of.
And so, what is it on Netflix?
Yeah, it's on Netflix. The weirdness and wonderfulness of it, and each episode's only 20 minutes. It goes on, it's something like 24 episodes in a season, so you get a lot of story. But the stories are in their weird Japanese explorations of European ideas of spirituality, which is probably just as weird as when we do Eastern spirituality and our things to them. So fair play to them. I just think it's fun and worth giving a go if you like stuff with swords and demons and things like that. There's some beautiful flights of whimsy and fancy in this that I won't ruin for people. But
cool.
Yeah,
so how many stars?
4 stars from me.
Cool.
So what's next?
The Harry Quebert affair.
Okay, what's that?
Well, it's on Stan at the moment.
Mm-hmm. So Stan is a Netflix streaming service for our international audience.
I think it might be Showtime or something like that.
Okay.
So it's got Patrick Dempsey in it,
Mm-hmm.
who's Dreamy from Grey's Anatomy.
Yep.
Who plays an author. So it's this kind of... So it's a murder mystery, basically. It's got a structure of current tense
How many
flashbacks.
episodes is it?
Be like 10, just a normal sort of season, 50-minute episodes, quite long episodes.
Right. Okay, so a 10-hour story.
Yeah. Based on a novel by Joel Dicker that apparently sold, I don't know, billions of copies and was translated into 8 million languages that I'd never heard of.
You know what, I consider myself quite the man of letters and I've never heard of Joel Dicker, but there you go.
Well, me neither. But anyway, I think he's a one-hit wonder. I don't think he's done anything since or as notable.
Doesn't need to if he's sold in that many languages.
He's just living off this, and now he's got this streaming rights.
Show.
Yep,
Okay.
he's
What's
living
it
the
about?
dream. So,
Well, hang on, let me take you back. What genre is it?
murder mystery.
Okay, murder mystery. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's about...
Drama.
Okay.
Murder mystery drama.
Cool.
There's a lot of genres I've just put in there, isn't it?
Yep.
So Patrick Dempsey is Harry, who's a close to retirement writer who wrote a blockbuster that was about a murder when he was younger.
Is this a book about writing a book?
Yeah.
Bleh.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, so I'll get there. So he is living his life in this nice sort of quaint lakeside mansion.
As you do in these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a hero author. And a body is dug up in his yard. And it's of a girl who went missing when she was 15, about 20 years prior. And it sort of slowly unravels that he was in a relationship with her, which, I gotta say, I was not very comfortable with.
Yeah, right.
So, admittedly, and this is, I would be interested to know what happens in the book, but you don't actually see them really engage in much of a physical relationship, but they're clearly in a romantic relationship.
Right.
So there's all these flashbacks.
It wasn't just that they were close friends.
No.
But 20 years ago, how old was he?
He was about 40.
So he's 60 when this is set.
He was in his 30s, maybe.
Okay.
He was well and truly adulted.
A man who should not be fooling around with 15-year-olds.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not going to put a limit on it, but I reckon once you're out of the teens, it becomes pretty skanky.
Over 20, you really want to move on.
So this is not really addressed in the show very much. And I think it's quite a recent novel, so I'm sort of a bit like this Lolita kind of storyline is extremely unoriginal.
Well, look, I mean, Nabokov still sells, so it's not like Lolita's storylines literally don't have an attraction to people.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's just a bit played out, isn't it?
I think people still have a frisson of excitement about it. People like the taboo and the breaking of taboos.
Well, I don't even think it's much of a taboo in our society, but anyway.
I mean, if you wanted something that's just wholesome entertainment, you'd watch The Cosby Show, and Lord knows where that takes you.
Anyway, and also I actually found it a little bit strange that in all of the, reviews and stuff that I'd read of the show, it's not really mentioned either. But I think it's a bit skanky and gross.
Okay. And you watched 10 hours of this?
Yes, so I watched this while recovering from an operation. So at points I was rather high on opiates prescribed legally.
Prescribed opiates, which you're now no longer taking.
No longer taking.
Okay.
So, I think that helped me get through a lot of it because I think a lot of this show is really unoriginal. So...
well, a writer writing a character who's a writer is like the least original thing for a writer to, particularly writing about a successful writer. It's like, ooh, here's my little dream fantasy wish fulfillment.
The leader storyline, obviously, we've spoken about how that's not very original. But then, so part of the story is trying to work out who actually murdered her, and if it was Harry or someone else or whatever. And his protege that Harry's protege is sort of charged with writing a book to unravel the mystery.
He's a writer with an apprentice writer?
Yes, yeah.
I don't think that happens in real life much either.
Well, he's a literary college professor.
Oh, right. He's a literary college professor as well as a
See,
writer.
that's what she said. So, you know, there's a lot of, you know, grey sort of sweaters with those big chunky collars and...
Yeah, right.
You know, he's got the wispy salt and pepper
Where
hair
is it
and
set?
all the... Look, I can't actually remember, but it's somewhere like Maine.
New England. Okay, so russet leaves falling
Yeah.
in the autumn and...
Yeah. There might be,
the fall.
you know, a beach.
Yeah, there's always a beach.
A bit of... Or a lake.
You know someone's made it if they live close to water.
It's, you know, a very well-to-do town. Mm-hmm. And there's kind of this cast of characters that are really stereotypical, like potential suspects. So there's like the rich guy that lives in the mansion who runs the town, who had a sort of secret relationship with Nola, who's the 15-year-old, but a non-sexual one. And then he has a disfigured chauffeur who is a secret artist who was painting portraits of Nola.
So there's a lot of red herrings in this story.
Yeah, but it's all like really cliched.
This sounds like Riverdale.
Yeah, it's really cliched, cheesy kind of characters.
Riverdale for old people.
Yeah.
Right. I take it the outfits are less fabulous than in Riverdale.
Well, you do sort of get probably maybe the benefit of doing the flashbacks to when they were younger.
Yeah.
It's actually a little bit unclear to me whether Patrick Dempsey was being CGI'd to make him look younger or made up to make him look older.
They normally split the difference with these.
Yeah, I think because you know his age is a bit in the middle. They were definitely doing something on either end. So it has a rather unsatisfying ending that now requires a season 2.
It always requires a season 2, doesn't it?
Presumably people who've read the book know how it ends, but perhaps it ends in such an unfulfilling way.
Will you
as
watch
well.
season 2?
I will not watch season 2.
And you have no interest in reading the book?
I give no F's about what happened to any of these people.
Okay, so this is a void, is what we're coming to here.
Yeah, I'm going to give it like 1 star.
What's it get the star for?
Well, I mean, I did persevere with the whole thing.
You were high on drugs at the time. Legally prescribed drugs we have.
Yeah, I was a captivated audience. Look, I mean, I think maybe for the first half there's a bit of interest.
Okay.
It's got good production values. Town's pretty.
Yep.
Fairly non-offensive kind of acting. It was sort of one of these comfortable storylines that you kind of knew what you were getting. Like, I was about 3 episodes in and I'm like, I know what I'm getting here.
Okay.
I can sit through this now. I got a little tired towards the end, but I just wanted to know who killed her, but... Well, prepare to be disappointed.
All right. So you won't get that in the first season?
Well, I think I've probably spoiled it by saying, you know, it's an unfulfilling ending.
Okay, sure. I'm not sure that counts as a spoiler, but...
No, I don't think it does either, but... and I actually think, to be fair, I wish someone had told me, because I think I probably would have given up at episode 5 if I knew that I wasn't going to find out.
Okay, so what's the name of the show again?
The Harry Quebert Affair.
That's just such a grim name to start anything with, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a "the" at the front, and then a name that means nothing to you, and then affair at the end means a thing about something that means nothing. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, somehow he sold all those copies. There you go. Alright, so 1 star for that.
What's next?
John Oliver, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver to give its correct name. Speaking of correct names, you want to retract something?
Yeah, I just got the name of that
show wrong.
It's called The Truth About the Harry Quebert Affair, which is a rather unnecessarily wordy title.
Which also means nothing and has no knowledge or... It sounds like just like an airport novel.
I think it might be. That's probably why it sold so many copies.
Yeah. And getting into those airport positions has got more to do with who's paying who than any real merit. But getting back to real merit, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, this is pretty much the only reason we are paying $50 a month to Foxtel.
That's true. So in Australia, we can only get it on Foxtel. Admittedly, they do show it very quickly after
I don't
the
think
US.
so.
Well,
They make us wait 2 days, basically. They could show it on Monday.
they could, yeah.
And
By
they
Australian
bollock the Game
lead
of
time
Thrones.
standards, it's reasonably quick. It's frustrating though. Foxtel really needs to lift their game because sometimes it just doesn't appear.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but when you're paying $50 a month, Netflix can get it right. Get off your butts, Foxtel, and sort your crap out.
Yeah, although to be fair, the Foxtel on-demand service for many years appeared to be run by the idiot nephews of the billionaires who own the network. And, I used to subscribe mostly to watch rugby, and often games just wouldn't appear because the idiot nephew who worked on a weekend just didn't bother. My friend Rob used to write lengthy emails to them on the subject of missing games of rugby, and actually had some success in getting responses out of the organisation explaining their failures.
It's beyond a joke. I mean, you want to talk about why they're moaning about their influx of streaming services when they've been a protected species for decades, and then they can't lift their competitive game. It's
simple
not
technical things,
excusable.
right? Yeah. Anyway, so it's on this Foxtel service that we're stuck with in Australia for a lot of high quality content, like Game of Thrones is the biggie.
And Last Week Tonight.
And Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. And it's quite a testament to John Oliver and the show that it is marquee programming that since Game of Thrones ended, rugby season, but that's been over for a few months. It's essentially the only reason we've kept this service going at $50 a month. There's nothing else we're watching on at the moment.
Yes, that's true.
And
it's a very clunky system to get into, so...
you can stream it off your phone to the Chromecast.
I want to push as few buttons as possible.
It doesn't work on the Apple TV.
And I mean, obviously, because Apple's not letting them on, but...
Yeah, I think Apple would let them on if they wanted to be on. I think it's because Foxtel have got their own dreams of having their own devices in everyone's living room, and no one wants another device in their living room. Look, that's a long way around to talk about
we
John
just
Oliver.
talked a lot about the issues of Australian streaming.
I think it speaks to the quality of the show. So it's very serious news, very deep dives into... It's not quite investigative journalism because mostly they're just collaging other people's investigations, but they do a very good job of that collaging, and I think there's a place for that if they can bring serious investigative pieces to an audience that's looking for a bit of light entertainment and a bit of news at the same time.
Yeah. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's hosted by an English guy called John Oliver, who's lived in America for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Got his start in the US on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And, it's a fairly kind of traditional format Daily Show kind of concept.
Except weekly.
Yeah, except weekly.
Yeah.
It's a guy sitting behind a desk talking about the news. With some kind of fake commercials thrown in there and stuff.
He is, in a very nerdy way, a very brilliant showman. The way he tells a story and he'll reverse himself to build tension.
Oh, I've got no problem with using the traditional format because it really works. And he's really good at it.
Very good at it, yeah.
Really good at it.
I mean, he did learn from Jon Stewart, who was very good at it.
And he was on that show for quite a while and a writer on that show. Apparently he started there because Ricky Gervais said to Jon Stewart, you should interview this guy. And
yeah, right.
John Oliver took a plane to America. It was the first time he'd ever been to America, and they were like, yep, you got a job.
Cool. It's amazing what
cool.
Recommendation from Ricky Gervais can
And apparently Ricky Gervais had never even met him. He'd just seen him do stand-up. And they wanted a British guy.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
I would say Ricky Gervais is probably a better judge of stand-up than most.
Yeah. But yeah, so like you were saying, one of the things I really love about this show is it really does do deep dives on some kind of pretty esoteric, kind of complex, usually boring ideas. Like he explains like really boring policy. Like there was an episode I think early on in the series, because it's, we're obviously, I think it's 5 seasons in, on net neutrality in the US.
Yep.
And I mean, who the hell understands what net neutrality is? But he did it in a really easy to understand way and actually forced policy change in the US.
Yeah, I mean, look, as someone who spent a rather large chunk of his life trying to make local news entertaining to a local audience, with some success on the audience front, when people make policy news boring. It's generally because they want to make it boring and they're trying to exclude people. There's normally a lot of high stakes and a lot of money involved. And John Oliver does as good a job as anyone, probably a better job than I ever did, of explaining the stakes and using that to bring tension and humour to the story. And almost always when these stories are boring and presented in a boring way to drive people away from the subject, that's no accident, that's deliberate. They don't want anyone looking at the subject.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it also takes time and money. It takes good writers, which not everyone has, but that's definitely one of the great things about this show. And also, even though it is a US-based show, it's quite worldly. It's obviously quite US-centric, mainly covering US politics.
John Oliver's definitely got a knowledge of the world and he brings that to the audience.
But, there's a definite... There's stories every week that cover world politics.
And he's mean to Australia, which I love.
There was a Bob Catter story this season, which was really good.
Normally, when Australia gets portrayed overseas, it's just, cutesy, oh, look, kangaroos, aren't they fluffy, aren't they cute? And John Oliver knows Australians well and is quite happy to skewer our darker sides, which I like. I like to see us presented as grown-ups and also see ourselves as the world sees us, which is good.
I think I enjoyed this season. I'd say the show's probably reaching quite like a mature kind of point. It's been around for about 4 years, so you would imagine now that they've probably got a really tight writing team. They've got their flow on. They're also extremely fortunate in that there was a lot of crazy stuff that happened this year in the US, especially.
And people need a light treatment of it as well, because otherwise it's getting dark outside. Yeah.
So it feels like the show's hitting its stride, and they're able to... there's really quite... Some of the stories were quite emotional. Like, I found their take on the US policy of separating immigrant children from their families... to be quite sad, but most of the time they usually do find a way to kind of put a positive kind of spin or maybe a hopefulness or something.
Rarely, but they do find ways to find humour in things.
Or maybe it's even just that there's a guy like John Oliver doing this that kind of gives you hope.
Yeah, and and you feel a sense of community that you're watching it, and that gives you a tiny glimmer of hope as well.
Yeah, like you feel like... Because I don't want to... He's preaching to the converted.
The fact that Rupert Murdoch's network, which is basically the Fox News of Australia to an American audience, is where it gets shown as well.
It is on the Comedy Channel, though, and I don't think you could really... given that channel has consistently aired these kinds of programs.
I have grave suspicions about the episodes that disappear, mind you.
To ignore this show, which is quite... it's won Emmys. It's critically acclaimed. It's very well received. I think to ignore that would be...
If Foxtel didn't hold the rights and broadcast it, we'd be watching it on YouTube, though. And we'd be watching it 2 days earlier.
Can you watch it on YouTube? I think you
No, we're blocked. We're geo-blocked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Anywho.
Well, that's the long arm of Murdoch, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an awesome show. It's one of my favourite shows.
Some of the running gags this year, I think they're getting better at delivering running gags through a season.
Yeah, there's
the stuff with Russell Crowe and his jockstrap and the Koala Chlamydia Award named after John Oliver. I wonder honestly whether they wrote the gags for Russell in some of that stuff as well, but
I don't know. I think Russell might be a kind of funny guy.
Yeah, I think you just wonder. Anyway, it was very well done, and I think we've just hinted enough to get people who haven't watched the show to be interested and give it a go. I would say because it's news-based, there's not, aside from historical interest, it's going to lose some freshness going back all the way to season 1. But I would definitely say if you haven't watched the show, jump in at the start of season 5 this year. There's 30 episodes.
Yeah, it does. There's some things that I wouldn't never have learnt about. Like they did this story on state attorney generals in the US and that system. That's really interesting to me. Like a political process.
Some of the stuff they're doing about the coal mining industry.
Yeah, I think that actually would have relevance for several years.
Yeah, it would. Some of the other jokes are highly topical.
Kavanaugh is probably good to watch back on. But yeah, stuff like with the US midterms is probably like meh after about 6 months.
Yeah. I would definitely say, if you haven't watched it, start at the beginning of season 5. There's 30 episodes to get your teeth into and get you ready for next year.
What stars?
You know what? If I was just rating it purely on its technical merits, I would say probably 4.5. But just because I feel it's a beacon of hope in a dark world, I'm going to go all the way for 5 stars.
Oh, I was worried you weren't going to go 5 stars for a second. I'm going 5 stars as well.
Nice one.
What's next?
Sabrina.
It's a remake of Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Yes, which was a... Now, to be fair, I'm pretty sure it was a comic book series out of the same stable as did Archie Comics, which is why, having done Riverdale, they've gone back and rebooted it.
By the way, this is when you know you're getting really old, when the shows that were given to you as a teenager are now being remade for teenagers.
Yeah. Now... I haven't finished this, Sabrina, and I probably won't. I'll get you to talk us through why you won't watch it at all. But essentially, this is Riverdale with witches.
Yes.
It literally, they do make mention that Riverdale is the next town over.
Okay, so they must be connected.
So there's potential in the future for some Riverdale Sabrina crossovers, I imagine. The show has huge glaring problems. Particularly, they resolve one of the most important issues of the show after about 4 episodes, and then it just trundles along as soap. And
well, I mean, that's basically why I couldn't watch it. I was just like, I can't fill my life with more rubbish. I watch enough rubbish as it is.
And there's mention of how dark it is, and I think there's obviously, this isn't, I think, I can tell, I know, the writing team have got very different ideas on where they want to take this. And some episodes, the writing team are going slasher film, they're going cannibals, they're going... even the nice witches are literally murdering each other with shovels.
So it gets a bit violent, does it?
Yeah. And then they'll switch it back to light, fluffy, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Salem the Cat.
Because the original Sabrina the Teenage Witch was extremely fluffy. I mean, it was basically Full House, but with women and witches.
A little bit of supernatural, yeah. A smattering of the supernatural. And this has a tension, obviously, in the writing team. Some episodes try to drag it back to that. And then you've just got an issue of apparently Sabrina is a few days before her 16th birthday at the start, and she's about to be initiated into the Black Church or whatever they call themselves, this coven of witches in this town. And apparently she's only just starting to ask questions a week before about what's involved with being a witch and wondering if maybe she does want to worship Satan. Which I've got to say as well, frankly, the Wiccan community must be apoplectic at their treatment in this as well.
So do they worship Satan in the show?
Yeah.
That's odd.
Yeah. It's the Dark Lord, and he's got, cloven feet and hairy legs and a big goat head. So she's evil. I'm surprised it gets through in America with all their, They literally have millions of practicing Wiccans in the country.
No, but they're quite a religious country and quite Christian.
Yeah, well, I think this is why if you're worshipping Satan, you're supposed to be bad, and there's some talk about how God is the Christian God is the false God, and Lucifer is the trying to liberate the human spirit. But then he turns all. I mean, that's a well-trodden stuff. Philip Pullman does it much better.
Slightly different audience.
Oh, the Golden Compass isn't that different an audience from Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Really?
Yeah.
Obviously, haven't watched enough.
Well, Golden Compass is the Dark Materials books are certainly well worth reading. And there was that movie with Nicole Kidman that was based on. I think they are planning some big budget TV series of that, but that's very different. Comparing it to this is totally out there. So the writing is all over the place. There is moments of great darkness that they then shy away from. I think there's a reference in one of the very early episodes to Eating the Long Pig by Aunt Zelda, one of the nicer witches, the harsher one, but the nicer one. And I don't think anyone involved in writing the show understood that was a cannibalism reference. Because there's later on where they talk about sacrificing a witch and eating her. There's suddenly, oh, horror, this is terrible. It's like, you literally talk cold-bloodedly about that earlier, and no one seemed upset by it at all back then.
Maybe it was just for audience members in the know, like you.
Well, yeah, but the fact that the characters went from, casually discussing their disappointment at missing out on cannibalism to some of those same characters then being upset about the concept later suggests a dissonance in the writing team to me. Anywho.
Anyway, how many stars? Did you watch the whole season?
No, I said I didn't.
Yeah, okay.
It really starts to drift once they resolve the issue of whether Sabrina, as a half-witch, can be part of the church, or they have to kill her, or whatever.
So 2 stars.
Yeah, 2 stars.
Oh, well.
It could be better. They had some interesting ideas, and I think they've squibbed it, and I can tell why they squibbed it, because going full darkness would probably have result in the show being taken off TV. Yeah, so 2 stars from me on that.
All right. Okay. Well, I think we're about done for this week.
We have. We've been talking on quite a bit. Thank you very much for listening. You can, as always, send us an email at gmtrpodcast@gmail.com if you want to let us know about a show you want to watch, or, just let us know. We'll read out your emails. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back in a week.
Thanks, folks.